Hey everybody! Today I'm going to share with you 5 guidelines I follow when tearing down paper for an edition. The first guideline I'm going to share with you is to always clean your surfaces first. Anything that touches the paper should be wiped down. This includes your ruler or tear bar. It includes the blade that you're going to be using to cut the paper if you're doing that. It also includes the cutting mat as well. This rule is really important if you're in a university print shop or some sort of community printmaking studio when other people are working as well. Always be sure, even if the surface looks clean, to go ahead and wipe it down because you might be surprised of the dirt and the ink that's on there. And the last thing you want to do is contaminate your beautiful paper just by using dirty materials. Secondly, make sure that you always cut Japanese papers and you tear Western papers. The reason is the Japanese paper fibers are super strong, but because of that, they're long as well. So because of their strength and length, you won't be able to get an even tear if you use a tear bar. For Western papers, it's desirable to tear them down so you get the deckled edge. It's a natural feature of the cotton paper, and it just adds an extra handmade quality to the print. If you're really into Western paper and you see yourself using it a lot in the future, then I would highly recommend that you purchase a professional tear bar. You can use a metal ruler to tear down Western paper, but the decal edge is not going to look as clean. There'll be a little line, straight line down the back of the paper, and then the paper is going to look more like it's been ripped than a natural handmade tear. Guideline number 3. If your blade is dull, then instead of tearing the paper, it's just going to drag it and it's going to rip the paper far into the center and just completely ruin your paper. You always want to be sure that you're using a clean, sharp blade, and I think it's just easy to use a new blade every single session. Not every single sheet of paper, but if you're cutting down, let's say 15 sheets of paper for an edition, I would use a new blade for that and then discard it after you've cut down all your paper. If you think it's expensive to use a new blade every time, well, you can buy a 100 pack of these box cutter blades for under $10. Right? Now just take a moment and compare the cost of a single blade to a single sheet of fine Japanese paper. All of a sudden now it's a lot less expensive to use a new blade every time than to risk damaging your precious paper that you paid good money for. Guideline number 4 is to make sure every single material, your editioning paper, your cutting materials, your cleaning materials, have a specific spot on your surface. You can establish a really quick working flow if everything has a specific spot. I like to keep my editioning paper on the top left of my cutting mat, and then right in front of me, the center, is where I have my measured registered cuts where I cut the paper, and then to the right I have the current stack of cut paper. So you're just moving from left to right. Pick it up from the left, cut it in the center, place the cut sheet in the pile on the stack to the right, and just keep going. So the 5th and final guideline that I have to share with you today is my favorite. I've saved the best for last. It's my favorite because when I learned this technique, it really sped up my paper resizing process. And on top of that, it safeguarded me from losing track of where I was and making a wrong cut or a wrong tear or just measuring wrong. Okay, and so this guideline is to always register your cuts. I like to take a few strips of blue tape and form a right angle in like the lower left-hand corner where the paper is going to be. And then once I measure the cut, I take 2 more strips of blue tape, one to place on the top of the cutting mat, one to place below the cutting, towards the bottom of the cutting mat, and I draw that Sharpie line signifying where the ruler or tear bar needs to be in order to properly tear down or cut down that paper. So instead of remeasuring every single time, you just measure once, you register the measurement, and then you pick up paper from the stack, place it down, and then you just make the cut. You don't even have to think about it. You can turn off your brain and just quickly flow through making that same cut to every single sheet in the stack. And then you can move the stack of paper to the left-hand side again, and then you can remeasure your next cut, right? Oftentimes we have to cut some of the sides off and then cut off some of the top or bottom to get the paper the size that we like. And so instead of doing that every single sheet, think about all the times you have to remeasure. You just measure the cuts once, register it, and then you apply that same cut to every single sheet. When you follow these tips, you'll begin to feel about resizing paper the way I feel about it now. And that is, it feels much more like a ritual and not a chore. It's not something you have to slog through. It actually kind of amps me up for printing when I start cutting my paper now. These are my 5 tips for you, my 5 guidelines for tearing down or cutting down your paper without ruining it. I hope this is helpful. Here's to making better prints.